Hi everyone. My name is Callie Foster. I work for the Home Upgrade Hub upstairs. Before we get started, just some housekeeping things. If you need to use the restroom, you can go out those double doors, take a left, and they are right across the hall. If you are done with your food, feel free to either leave your plate on your table or there is a silver tray back there that you can put it on. Feel free to eat as much as you'd like. I think we do have plenty for the number of people that RSVP'd. And then before we get started, I also want to let you know that this presentation is being recorded by Missoula Community Access Television as a part of a media assistant grant donated to our organization by MCAT. So MCAT is in the back. I ask that the speakers kind of stick close to the podium so the mic can pick up on that, so MCAT has good audio for us. And with that, I want to introduce Amy from Climate Smart Missoula. She's going to say just a quick something, and then we're going to get into our presentations.
Thanks. Hi, Robin. Yes, I'm Amy Sullenberg, and I'm the Executive Director at Climate Smart Missoula. And this event is part of Wildfire Awareness Month, right? Or something like that. Anyway, it blends together, but it also fits into our third annual Climate Solutions Week, which started this past Saturday and runs through Sunday coming up here. And it's just a week of over 20 events where we partner with different organizations and different groups like the Home Upgrade Hub and Missoula County to think about how we reduce our contribution to climate change and how we become more resilient and adapt. So this wildfire event, that you're going to learn about today is super important as we see more longer wildfire seasons and more severe wildfires over time. The work that we do at Climate Smart, since we got started about 10 years ago, has focused on working with Missoula Public Health, our health department, on wildfire smoke and how easily it does get into our homes and how we can reduce our exposure. So I'm not going to speak to that. I think, do you speak a little to that?
Yeah. Really, I'll touch on smoke,
so we'll touch on smoke, but it's a part, we need to protect, prepare for fires, both for our homes, but also thinking about indoor air quality during wildfire smoke season. I'm not going to talk about it too much, in part because we think hopefully wildfire smoke season is over for now, and it is pretty easy to reduce exposure by getting a way to clean your indoor air, a HEPA air cleaner, do it yourself, or improving your home indoor air system, your air filtration system. So I'm not going to speak too much about it, but just know that there are lots of resources. I'm going to pass out a brochure. If you don't need it or don't want it, you can leave it back at the table. We have just all kinds of resources at montanawildfiresmoke.org, which again is a joint program between Climate Smart and Missoula Public Health. And we just try to make resources available to folks so that we can be healthy during wildfire smoke season. But thank you guys so much for coming, and it's been a great Climate Solutions Week, and we look forward to connecting. Thanks.
Okay, and with that, we're going to start with Olivia Anderson. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Cool.
1 second.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks you guys for coming. My voice is somewhat with me today, so if I need to take a water break or something, that's what's happening. But yeah, thanks for the introduction. I'm Olivia. I work with Missoula County in the Office of Emergency Management. And yeah, I've been with OEM for about a month now, but I know that team really closely because before this I was working with the Department of Natural Resources, so at the state level, and now I'm doing similar work, but here in Missoula County. And yeah, it's a super collaborative field of work, which is really awesome. And I think to Amy's point, there's lots of people around here with a lot of different knowledge on different things that kind of work together, whether it's smoke readiness, fuel mitigation, home ignition zone stuff, home hardening, things like that. So hopefully you learned something today, and if you have questions, maybe wait till I'm done presenting. Unless it's super pressing, then feel free to shout it out. I'm not too structured. So yeah, I'm going to be going over the home ignition zone. Some of you may have heard of that before, but the home ignition zone, or HIZ is how I'll probably refer to it going forward because it's a mouthful, is a term that explains 3 different zones, and they have different lengths and different mitigations, recommendations within each zone. And yeah, a really cool thing about the home ignition zone, and knowing me, I'm probably jumping ahead of my slides, but the home ignition zone was actually researched really locally to us right here out of the Missoula Fire Lab. Dr. Jack Cohen is kind of a name you might hear and attach with the home ignition zone because he and a team of researchers like really pioneered this topic. And what Jack Cohen saw, actually there's this really cool YouTube video that shows that he's created where he kind of explains how he noticed the home ignition zone, and actually right from a fire in Patty Canyon, he noticed that there was a fire, but there were homes burning ahead of the fire, and that's because he noticed that there were embers shooting off of that fire, landing on the home and landing near the home, and he realized this is probably something we could do. We can do something with this, and we can change something with this. And living right here in Missoula County, we are in the heart of it. We are right here in this wildfire risk red. You can tell that our county and Ravalli County are incredibly high risk areas for wildfire. This is a graphic out of Headwaters Economics. I encourage you to look at their stuff. They have some really neat research on wildfire risk. And yeah, so you can tell that this topic, there's a lot of work to be done here, and it's really gonna take all of us, not just agencies and organizations, but really the homeowner as well. So yeah, thanks for being interested in this topic today. So yeah, the home ignition zone, it's basically broken up into 3 zones that goes out to about 100 feet or 200 feet if you're on a steeper slope. You're gonna wanna do some more mitigation, which I'll get into in a little bit. And yeah, it's really focusing on small details a lot of times. About 90% of homes are lost from a wildfire due to embers, which I think is a pretty interesting statistic. There's kind of 3 ways that a home can burn from a wildfire. There's direct flame contact, which I think is what a lot of people think of, which could happen, but there's also radiant heat. So that is when something is hot enough next to a home that it then starts the home on fire as well. So think about a marshmallow over a campfire. The marshmallow is still cooking, even if it's above the fire. And then embers. These embers in an extreme fire behavior day, it's not just a little flurry of them. It is a really intense storm, thousands of embers coming towards a structure. So yeah, and they can travel. Would be on a pretty windy day, but they can travel pretty far ahead of a fire. Yeah, I'm just gonna get some water. And one other kind of leading researcher I want to mention is the Insurance Institute of Business and Home Safety, IBHS. I think they have a lab in North Carolina, and they do a lot of work in California, but they do a lot of really cool studies by actually like building structures and creating these ember storms, and there's some really good YouTube videos on it. I'm more of a visual learner, so I encourage you just Googling the home ignition zone sometime, and you'll see some of their work. Yeah. And then one other quote to just kind of set the framework. Preparing your home for wildfires also protects your neighbors' homes, and it protects first responders. First responders are facing, in this wild and urban interface fire world that we have now, they're facing some pretty extreme and dangerous situations. By mitigating your home ignition zone, you are creating a much safer environment for those first responders to feel like they can even access certain neighborhoods. So yeah, you're not helping yourself, but you're helping other people too. This is a video from IBHS, which hopefully all goes well. When I hit play, oh, I spoke too soon.
We're going to start with our ember generators, which we use to recreate a realistic ember exposure. Embers are those small burning and smoldering particles that may travel ahead of the fire front. And what we do with our generators is we create the realistic exposure, and in our wind tunnel, we're able to throw them at a building. And then we have a building that has two sides to it, a good side, which uses wildfire-resistant construction, and what we're considering a typical building that we would see in a wildfire-prone area. Exactly as we expected, that mulch on the ground there caught fire from the embers. The fire from the mulch burned up underneath this deck, and this whole deck was on fire. And so this fire on this deck caused flames right against the home. And then if we look there at the base of the door, there was actually the flame from this deck that burns through the bottom of the door, and on the inside of the house we started to see smoke and flames. And so because this deck was a combustible material attached to the building, when the embers led to the ignition of this deck, we got flames inside the building. Here we are on the wildfire-resistant side of the house, where we had non-combustible siding, a 5-foot non-combustible zone, and a 6-inch gap. We had a metal gutter and multi-pane windows, and we see in comparison to the non-wildfire-resistant side, the side had the same ember exposure. If you look here in the mulch, you can actually see some of the embers that had accumulated, but because they had no susceptible fuel to ignite, they just landed there and fizzled out. And here we have ornamental vegetation that again was susceptible to the embers, but because it's more than 5 feet away from the home, it didn't have enough energy to ignite, and it never led to a flame impact on the building.
Awesome.
So the structure on the right had the hardy plank.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think this video is a good way to kind of show even just things like wood mulch. That was a huge difference in that home survivability. Also siding. Yeah, and I think it's cool how they show the embers that land on the rock mulch and just kind of fizzle out. Yeah, I'll go more into the details here. So this is our immediate zone. This is our first 0 to 5 feet, and this also includes the house. Changing the home and like retrofitting it for wildfire, the like physical home, a lot of times that's called home hardening. And I'll go over the different ways you want to harden a home for wildfire. It's probably what you think. Metal roofs and asphalt roofs are the best, actually. Asphalt roofs have been shown to be pretty much, I mean, they're right up there with metal roofs as long as you maintain them. Metal roofs are also great, but they do sometimes come with open ends at the bottom of them, and you'd want to make sure you plug those because that is still a big vulnerability for embers to get in. And then for siding, ideally having some sort of non-combustible siding. A lot of people have wood siding, and that totally makes sense. So with wood siding, it can cost a lot to change your roof, and it can cost a lot to change your siding. Luckily, if you do have some sort of wood siding, just maintaining a really nice layer of paint on that is gonna go a pretty far ways. Log homes actually have been shown to be pretty fire and ember resistant. Sometimes log homes, they start to get cracks in them over time. That's when you're gonna wanna seal those off. But a really thick log home, it would take a lot of heat for that to start. So those have been shown to actually be pretty fire and ember resistant as long as they're well maintained. And then another thing you're going to want to make sure, if you have any sort of open attic vents on your home, you're going to want to make sure that there's some 1/8 inch metal mesh screening over that. A lot of people already have a screening on those vents for things like critters and insects, but you want it, a quarter's too big. You want it to be a 1/8 inch metal mesh for it to actually stop embers or significantly reduce the heat of those embers that might come into your home. There are special things that are sold now called like Vulcan vents that are designed to block out embers and flames while still getting airflow in and out, something to look up. And then your windows, having them be multi-paned is best. Windows are going to shatter before your siding's gonna start. Like let's say there's a bush in front of a window and that catches on fire, that's gonna be a pretty intense heat that could shatter a window. So having those double pane windows helps with that, helps make them a little bit stronger. Boxing in your eaves. Unboxed eaves create a unique design that embers are able to kind of get in there and swirl around and maybe catch on fire. And they've found that just boxing in your eaves makes a pretty significant difference. And then porches, I do a lot of home assessments. So basically with a home assessment, and you guys can sign up for one today if you want, or anytime you can take my card and give me a call. But basically, in those home assessments, I'll go out and talk about this stuff specific to your home and property. And I do come across a lot of porches. And frankly, I don't see a lot of properties that look like this here in Montana. There's usually maybe more trees or they're on a slope, things like that. But with wooden porches, I found that I always tell people you can replace it with something like Trex. You can look into some sort of cement porch. That's a big cost. So again, painting your porch, not having kind of like chipped paint and like bubbly paint where embers can get in is gonna make a big difference. And then a huge part about the porch is actually, if it's elevated, what's beneath it. So not keeping any firewood or cushions or anything that could combust from embers. They love to go into places and swirl around. So if you do have an elevated porch, make sure first that it's clear of anything combustible. And then second, if you're able to just close that off altogether, like that image I have over there, it's kind of hard to see, but there is a really fine metal mesh right there. So if you're able to block it off altogether, that's great too. And then being aware of whatever you keep on top of the porch, like doormats, cushions, brooms, furniture that could combust. You can still have that. You still want to live in your home. That's totally fine. But if you go out of town during wildfire season, or you see there's maybe a fire in the area, you don't have to evacuate yet, but it's on your mind. Just bring those inside. Maybe you work all day in town, you're away from your home. All that stuff has combusted and started homes on fire, so just be aware of that. And then, working out is our 5-foot immediate zone. I have heard this has been referred to as the 0 zone. So ideally having nothing combustible 5 feet from your home. I would say the best thing you can do, if you have wood mulch and you're able to, replacing that with some sort of rock or stone, gravel, something like that. I've seen some really beautiful landscaping done with rocks before. And then if you do want to landscape in this area, I'll get into it a little bit more in a second. You can plant in this zone. You just want to be really kind of thoughtful about the plants you're planting, avoiding vegetation with needles, specifically juniper are really combustible, and leaning more towards deciduous plants, keeping them to a smaller size, maybe having them be a few feet away from the siding, trying not to plant in front of windows, picking things like succulents, lavender is really great too. Just being a little bit more mindful about what's right up against your house. That the same thing goes with firewood. You don't want that stacked against your house during fire season. In the winter, totally get it, but maybe during the summer and wildfire season, you could at least move it. It's actually recommended 30 feet from the house. Yeah. And then just making sure you keep that area really clear of debris, even just taking a leaf blower to that zone. If you have rock down, that can be hard to clean out. Just taking a pretty strong leaf blower to blow things away can make a big difference. Yeah, and then make sure you maintain clean gutters, clean off your roof.
Yeah, I mean, it's intuitive to people, but, you know, obviously Jack's photos
Yeah,
from some of the previous fires and the campfire
Yeah.
in California was a classic example of green vegetation all around these burned homes. Trees were alive, the house was burned out,
yeah,
but that's because of this.
exactly, yeah. No, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, it is, there's some pretty powerful images, and those little details really do go a long way. And it sounds like a long list of maintenance, but making sure that's like kind of priority on your list. If I were to say where to start with anything, it would always be the home itself in that 5-foot zone. That's where you're gonna get the biggest, I don't know if bang for your buck's the right word, but the biggest difference in what you do.
Olivia, why deciduous trees?
Oh yeah, they have more moisture in them. Their leaves, the conifers a lot of times, and I can get into that more. There's different, as we get more into the yard, like ponderosa and some of our more fire adapted species, but a lot of times in this zone I see, it's really the juniper that I see a lot of, or juniper family plants specifically are grown up against the home. I think they're just a really popular landscaping plant, and I'd like to see those further away from the house.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You said paint, if you have a wood deck.
Oh, yeah.
paint it. The stain is the same thing as paint.
Yeah, staining works well too. Yeah. Yeah, and you'll see if you start looking into that stuff, they sell like fire resistant, I always use resistant lightly, but fire resistant paint and stains. I think they're good. They're pretty expensive, but they only last, it's like something like only 5 heavy rains. That's really hard to do here. So I think you can invest in something like that if you want, but using just a normal paint or stain is gonna go a long ways too. And I'm not gonna spend a long time on this slide, but I think it does a nice example of just going through the checklist of the things that I talked about, that rock zone around the home. Yeah. So Firewise Gardens, this is a garden that I actually got to see. This is out of the Helena, one of their fire stations, and they've done a really cool demonstration garden here of more fire-resistant plants. They have that rock down. Yeah, I think it's just a neat example showing that you can have plants near your house. You just have to be a little more mindful of how spaced out they are and things like that. And I guess I'll make a plug for October 14th at 6 p.m. My office, our wildfire team, is going to be doing an event called Blooms and Brews, where my colleague Nate is going to go really in depth into this Firewise landscaping. I'll also do a brief presentation on the home ignition zone, so I guess you'd have to sit through that again. But we'll kind of go over all that stuff, and then we'll do, hopefully if the weather allows, a fire demonstration of a juniper burning. So fire, and there'll be drinks. I don't know, it's pretty fun. It's at 6 p.m., it's right here, so.
Where's it?
Here.
Oh, right here?
Yeah. Come on out. That I don't know, but someone's figured that out.
I know where it is. We call it the baby barn. There's a white structure in the back where we store most of our lawn equipment.
Okay.
And there is a gravel, like, driveway area, so we're gonna burn it out there.
Yeah, Yeah, and there'll be a fire engine on scene. I'll just clarify that. But yeah, they're a pretty volatile plant. I've heard firefighters call them gas cans before. So just, especially if it's near your house, that's maybe something to think about. Or you might want to significantly trim it down. They are a pain to remove, so it's something. Okay, so we're moving out into our immediate zone. This is 5 to 30 feet. I've heard this has been referred to as lean, green, and clean. And in this zone, you might see more like lawns. So keeping your lawn mowed, keeping it watered. Maybe you have a wooden fence around the property. That's okay, but is that wooden fence leading directly to your structure? Wooden fences act like wicks for fire. So even if a fire starts further out in the yard, but that wooden fence goes right to the home, that could put it at risk. So even replacing the last 3 posts of a wooden fence with something like Trex or metal would make a difference, and you wouldn't have to replace the whole fence. And then, yeah, maybe in this zone you have some more trees popping up, so removing ladder fuels. Ladder fuels are the vegetation that is growing beneath a tree. So it could be tall grass, it could be another bush. Ladder fuels are basically a ladder for fire to go from the ground and into the canopy. So
Yeah, it could be branches from the tree.
it could be branches from the tree, exactly. So limbing up lower tree branches is going to get that off the ground, and having that fire stay on the ground is going to be a lot better than when it gets up into the crowns of the trees, which gets into tree spacing. If the crowns of the trees are touching, especially in this area so close to your home, that could be a pretty significant amount of embers and heat going towards your home and be a pretty big fire depending on how many trees and how close you have them together. Yeah, so this zone, and really the whole home ignition zone, is about breaking up that path of fire. So hopefully it doesn't get to your structure and eventually fizzles out. That's kind of the idea. Yeah, something I've seen people have a lot of times are propane tanks. You're also going to want to treat those as like an area to remove vegetation. So maybe putting some rock or gravel around those tanks, or at least not having bushes and vegetation surrounding them. Yeah, I think that's what I want to talk about there, because some of it will go into here. So the extended zone, again, this is where you might have trees. There are people, you might not really have an extended zone or much past this because you live in a more tight-knit neighborhood. So if you do live in a more tight-knit neighborhood, focusing on your immediate zone and what you can do there, it still makes a really big difference. And yeah, unfortunately you can't control what your neighbors do, but you can at least maybe have a conversation with them, give them some ideas about what you learned today, and kind of work together. So if you do have more of a forested property, I can go over some things there. At least in this 100-foot zone, you still want to maintain a pretty significant tree spacing. You want to remove those ladder fuels, keep limbing up tree branches where you can. And yeah, the home ignition zone, this all applies to garages, or maybe you have a shop, something like that. You can still apply this same 5-foot rock zone. You can screen off vents. You can still do all of that to protect your shops and things like that as well. Yeah, so when we look out into these areas, and maybe you have a property that's bigger, something that Missoula County has, our office has a grant right now where we can help homeowners do some fuel mitigation. Unfortunately, it does not cover Lolo or Frenchtown. We are hopefully going to get some money to do that, but it's pretty awesome. We've had some projects, a lot up Patty Canyon, anything it can be small, just an acre. It can be much bigger than that, but a lot of it is just us helping that homeowner cover some of that cost. It's a 75-25 match. Homeowner pays 25, and we pay 75, and we'll allow that homeowner to choose their contractor. They'll get bids, and then that contractor will come in and basically do some thinning. The reason why we're doing that, there's kind of two things here. We want to help private homeowners and landowners mitigate their property for fire risk. So if there was a fire, hopefully we're just preparing our entire wildland-urban interface a little bit better. And then second, a huge part of this is just helping some of our overgrown forests and properties get a little bit more space. I won't go too into the weeds, but years and years of fire suppression has created some pretty overgrown forests. Species like Douglas fir, which are a little bit more shade tolerant, have been able to really take hold in a lot of our forests, and competing things like ponderosa pine, our lovely western larch, and those species that are more fire adapted. So by getting in there and clearing things out, it'll hopefully help with that, maybe return some wildlife to the area. Deer and elk like the space to move around. If you take a drive up Patty Canyon and go up like something like Arnica, you'll notice there's some projects, and they look pretty beautiful in my opinion. And I think it's kind of a neat way to help kind of be a better forest steward.
Is the grant income-based?
No. We are looking at that, but no, you don't have to have that.
Is the grant restricted to the movie areas, or can it be in the middle of town?
It's not the middle of town. It is not for things like 1 or 2 tree removals. That would have to be an arborist, unfortunately. Yeah, it's for more kind of fuel treatment. But yeah, that's a great question that I should have clarified.
How many grants have been given out, or how many people have?
Ooh, that's a great question. And oh my gosh, I'm thinking of our Excel sheet, more than 30 for sure. We've only been doing this for about a year, but
And
yeah.
That's based on the grant you got.
That's just our grant. Yeah, and that was Community Wildfire Defense Grant. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Oh yeah, and if it's a steep slope, I should also mention that you're going to want to maintain that tree spacing out into that 200-foot, maybe even more zone if it's a really steep slope. The way fire travels, it travels fast uphill, so you're going to want to get those trees a bit more spaced out. Kind of like that image up there. And then one other thing that I think is important in this zone is thinking about your access to your property. Is it overgrown a bit? If first responders feel like they can't safely get into an area, or more likely safely leave that area, they're not going to go in there. So making sure you keep a safe access is really, really important if you can do that. And another small detail, putting reflective tape on your house numbers, that can actually make a big difference for if it's really smoky. Sometimes it looks like the middle of the night. So having those reflective house numbers is just that much more quicker for first responders. Yeah. I like to include a page about renters because some of us don't own homes, and that can be tricky. There are some things you can do. I've actually done home assessments with landlords before, which I think is cool. You can bring up this conversation to your landlord. It should be something that they're interested in too. Maybe you can go over something about replacing wood mulch with something like rock in front of the home, screening in vents, and yeah, maybe encourage them to get a home assessment and get in touch with local fire professionals. Yeah, and I feel like they should be maintaining clean gutters and doing some of that basic yard work anyways, but sometimes you just have to ask. Yeah, and then when I was doing research on this, I came across I mean, renter's insurance. I have renter's insurance. I've never thought about it covering wildfire. Doesn't seem like it's super common, but I thought that was interesting and maybe worth asking. But most importantly, something you can do is being prepared to evacuate. Really for anyone. I think living here, especially after what we saw happen to LA, being prepared to leave is so, so important. It just makes it safer for everyone, for first responders to do their work too. And I'll go into a little bit more depth in what that looks like, but yeah. And another thing, signing up for a free wildfire risk home assessment. It's kind of what I'll be doing, probably pointing up at the sky a lot and pointing at trees. So yeah, you can sign up at the table or talk to me after. So evacuations. Here in Missoula County, we have Smart 911. That is an opt-in service. It is very confidential. You can choose the alerts to a point of what you want. You don't need to get an alert for every single thing going on in the county, but this really is our only way of contacting you of an evacuation. There is not enough firefighters or first responders for every home. There's just not. So you can't guarantee that someone's gonna knock on your door or someone's gonna protect your structure. So yeah, that's why the home ignition zone is so important. And then another thing to consider when you're thinking about your evacuations, consider, I come across this sometimes, do you have a child who's maybe 12, 13, 14, they're not driving, but they stay home alone? Do they have a neighbor they can get a ride from in case of an emergency? Are they signed up for emergency alerts? Think about your pets. Pets are the #1 reason why people break an evacuation order. They're a member of the family, so you want to include them in your evacuation planning. Maybe you have a neighbor that if you're in town all day for work, maybe you have a neighbor come and grab your pet in case you're not home and unable to grab them. Livestock as well. Have a plan for that, even if the plan is opening the gate to let them out, that's still a plan. There is actually really cool work being done by Natalie Sullivan. She's an Ecology Extension County employee, and she has awesome resources on preparing livestock. She has looked into how the county will set up livestock areas for an evacuation, like maybe the fairgrounds, to bring horses and things like that. I don't feel comfortable going too much detail into that, but Natalie is definitely your go-to person for that, and I'm happy to share her email if you have more questions. And most importantly, leaving early. If you are one of the people that live in maybe a drainage with one way in, one way out, which we do have, we've got our Rattlesnake and our Grant Creek folk and O'Brien Creek and etc. Leaving early is so important. Even if you never got notified to evacuate at the end of the day, but you spent the day in town, I think that's a win. Just knowing that it might take a while with traffic flowing in one direction, leaving early is going to be really important. And then having your evacuation go bag ready during wildfire season. That looks like enough food and water for 72 hours, food for your pets, passports, prescriptions, copies of sentimental photos. Maybe you have a list of, okay, if there's an evacuation warning, I'm gonna grab the couch cushion or the porch cushions and I'm gonna bring those inside, and you're gonna get the dog ready. So just thinking through that plan, how Missoula County does it, we do a warning and then an order. A warning means my car's packed, I'm ready to go, and an order means I'm on my way. So, yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I was on the board of Fire State Montana for several years, and we lived up Grant Creek. So this whole leave early thing, I mean, we were wrestling with the Australian strategy of state prepare and defend, where a lot of people there feel like it's safer, and of course, in terms of protecting their homes, they were taking that onus, that responsibility on themselves. But we brought up a speaker from San Diego whose kids died leaving. Basically drove into the fire. So that whole leave early thing, oftentimes you're better staying with your house, if you don't get out,
Yeah.
sooner.
I would caution that because wildfire can be unpredictable and people have stayed before and that didn't work out well. So I do think, at least with our system here in Missoula County, we are able to give a notification. So my message and our messages will always be to evacuate. Yeah. And it does put first responders' lives at risk trying to get in there and save people. But I've had many conversations around that too.
Yeah.
So
It's a debate.
it is, and it's a complex one. Like I wish I knew where the fire was coming from, but yeah. And the way our town was designed with some of those one roads in, it's just kind of the
Absolutely.
situation we're facing.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're cut off. Yep.
Are you saying those kids were away from the home and went back to the home?
No, they left their home, but they left too late,
That's horrible.
and they were killed in their car. Yeah. So San Diego, again, it's different force type.
Different fuels.
Yeah, different fuels, much more chaparral-like. So this happened in the 2000 odds, so it was, like 20 years ago. California, because they've had so many more wildfires and definitely more urban and suburban locales. But Australia is the same way because it burns so frequently there because of the eucalyptus.
Yeah.
Is there coordination with train transportation? I'm just thinking of the rattlesnake to make sure that there's not
A train.
a
Yeah.
train that's,
Totally.
going down.
Sorry.
Obviously,
Yeah.
could be in other parts of
Totally.
the state as well.
Yeah, no, that's a really great question. We have the Office of Emergency Management, along with, we meet frequently with Sheriff's Department, Fire Department, Missoula Rural, Forest Service, everyone, and we go over questions like that. I don't know. I'd have to ask our someone else about like specifically stopping trains for an evacuation. I think that's definitely probably something they've talked about.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Something cool that we have is this software where we're able to run evacuation simulations. So OEM is looking at that problem. Part of their whole job is looking at that every single day. What would it look like if this neighborhood had to evacuate? And they're able to do different simulations on that, which is pretty neat. But yeah, I'm gonna ask my colleague about that question so I know for the future if I could ask that. Thank you. And then smoke. Amy touched on this, and I'm learning more about wildfire smoke and the things you can do, so feel free to jump in. But yeah, having that HEPA filter in your bedroom, especially where you sleep, is really important. To cover a whole home, you're gonna want more than one to clean your air. And then checking your air quality. So maybe it's an unhealthy for sensitive groups day, changing the activity you're doing for the day. There are clean air spaces. Missoula has the library, which is pretty cool. They're a clean air space. You maybe hang out at the library. I love the library. Yeah, and keeping an eye on just kind of the air quality for your area, but maybe there's a different area with some better air quality that you could go hang out in for the day. I noticed during one of the prescribed fires last year, I think it was in the Potomac area, but there was some pretty heavy smoke in the Rattlesnake. But if you even went over to Blue Mountain that day for your hike rather than up there, you had different air quality. So just knowing that you might have to change your activity and be adaptable as we do things like prescribed fire is kind of a cool way to make that happen. And then you can build a box fan air cleaner, which is cool. You can kind of Google how to do that. And then there is a rebate through Northwestern Energy if you're one of their customers where they can pay $100 if you get an air cleaner. You can just buy one at Costco and they'll reimburse you $100. It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Can I just add really quick?
Yes,
Yeah,
please do.
Instead of Googling, you can just go to montanawildfiresmoke.org and get all this information, including a direct link to the rebate form. So you do have to purchase it ahead of time. It's supposed to be Energy Star. But that rebate, they just renewed it up and through the middle of the summer. We never know if it will go on year to year. But you can get a good HEPA air cleaner for $130 or something, $150. It all depends on the size. Big ones for larger rooms or commercial spaces cost more, but you can get a reasonably sized one. And I think, like Olivia said, having more than one is great. I have a small house and I have 4. I also have an air sensor in there, and I have watched it. I've let the smoke come in, watch the air quality go to very unhealthy, shut my windows, turned on my air filters, and within 20 minutes, my air was clean. It's really amazing, and that is basically the only thing we can do for wildfire smoke other than leave town or try to find clean air is to clean our indoor air. And we just know because our homes leak, the air comes in through the doors, windows, cracks, all those kinds of things, that if the smoke is around for even a day, that air quality in your home will be as bad as it is outside. But again, there's something we can do about it. So pass the word, and again, you don't have to think about it too much now, but because you got that rebate, if you don't have one, you can get one now and have that filter ready to go. And then the last thing I'll just mention, sorry to take up a few more of your time, is that that the actual air filters, whether it's a furnace filter attached to a fan or the HEPA insert filter that actually gets the small dangerous particles, you do need to replace those. They get really dirty, and once they're really, really dirty, they're just not going to be effective at doing that. So it's a few maintenance things, and it's a few things to think about preparedness, just like we're doing with preparing for wildfires, we can prepare for smoke. And the more we learn about the dangers of smoke, we used to do this, just these people are vulnerable. Now we know that everybody is vulnerable, including our pets.
What was that website again?
MontanaWildfireSmoke.org. If you get one of those brochures, it's on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're just designed to have lots of resources for folks. So. Yeah.
I got some air filters for a Pure Box from Costco, and they worked really well, and I got the rebate, so that was great. But previously, I just ran my fan, from my furnace. You could just run fan only, and I put in like a heavy-duty 2500 filtrate. You would not believe, this would not have been 2017 when Lola was burning. You would not believe how much tar and grit I caught in just, 3 weeks, and it's just like black.
Right, so you can put a higher efficiency filter in your air circulation system. The trick is that not every system can handle that extra filter. It'll make the system run harder. So you just have to really check. You might even have an HVAC technician tell you whether that's a good thing to do, or, as you said, to change it, right? Because what can happen is people put those in, they forget about them, and then that system's just working really hard the dirtier it gets.
Because it's so clogged.
Because it gets so clogged. And eventually, the air can kind of find its way around, and then it just won't be as effective. But there's just, the nice thing about those portable ones is, like, you can't do anything wrong. Like, you can't stress your system. Some people do both. Yeah, so good point. Yeah.
Are there additional monitoring stations in Missoula? I know of the one, I forget the name of the park. Boyd Park. Are there additional, like, you mentioned Blue Mountain?
There's some in Sealy Lake.
So the regulatory monitors that the EPA funds throughout Montana, that Missoula Public Health sets up and runs, it's an EPA program. It's Boyd Park, which is right over here. And then there is one up in Sealy. And then the health department has also put up a number of indoor and outdoor purple air monitors. So they're a sensor that's not quite as it has sometimes a little more variation. There's just a lower grade monitor, but it works. So the website that we all send people to is fire.airnow.gov. It's an EPA site, so who knows if it'll be here next summer. But right now, what's great about that site, it'll have the regulatory monitors, the permanent monitors. It will have on purple airs that are either public or private that people have said, hey, go ahead, I'm happy to share my data from my own purple air sensor. And then you can also toggle on a smoke plume map. And so it will show you where the smoke is coming from and where it's headed. So it has everything there. It's really great. And even DEQ, who has their own site, will send people to this EPA site because it has everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there's a Purple Air site.
Yeah. Yeah, Purple Air also has their own sites, and those will show you some people who have indoor air monitors that they just like to make public. So there's Purple Airs are also on fire.fairnow.gov, so there's lots of options out there. Again, we have that stuff on that website and that brochure I passed out to help you. Hopefully we won't need it until...
Totally. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's the same with a lot of this wildfire stuff. We might be ending the season, so, but still good things to know for next year, and you can always plan through the winter. I won't take up much more time, but in summary, the home ignition zone, it's science-based, it's pretty cool, it does work, and little things do make a big difference, and we're here to help you. I can come out with a home assessment, I can get you in touch with our fuel mitigation grant person with the county, and just remembering that living in Montana means living with fire. We need fire, but we also live here, and we don't want fire where we live. So it's having this really complex situation, but luckily there's a lot of research and a lot of caring people, and we're working together as well as with homeowners, which is pretty awesome. And I'll make one other plug for the home ignition zone. I know some of the things I mentioned, like cleaning gutters and maybe removing bushes, they come with time and maybe different abilities. So leaning on each other, working with your neighbors, maybe you know a high school kid that wants to make some extra bucks and can clean your gutters throughout the summer. I think it has to be kind of like a group project, I guess I'll say. Yeah, and then I'll make one last plug for MT Fire Info. This is a great resource for not only it's across the state. It shows fires across the state, so knowing that, and then it has so many different toggles on wildfire preparedness. Pretty much all the publications I have on the back table you could access through this website as well. So that's pretty neat. Yeah, I think that's all I have for this presentation, unless we have questions, or we could jump into you, yeah.
Well, I think this is really some great information.
Thank you.
More and more people need to understand. What is your just impression of how prepared Missoula is?
Oh, that's such a good question. For the home ignition zone, yeah. I love this county because it is so big and it's so diverse. Something that we do with our home assessments afterwards, I enter them into a mapping program. So it creates a dot of like green being low risk, orange moderate, red high. And I think we're doing pretty well. I can think of certain neighborhoods, like up in Huson, we have this neighborhood of Elk Meadows that has done some really incredible home ignition zone work. They have kind of a spark plug neighbor that's pushing a lot of that information to their neighbors. Upper Rattlesnake, as well as Grant Creek, has pretty active home ignition zone work. There's parts of this county that I need to go more, that I haven't seen, that probably could use some more home ignition zone work, to be honest. I think we could always improve. I think we're probably doing okay, but I think compared to other parts of the country, I'd like to think that Missoula County, since we have so much awesome fire knowledge and people in this field, that we're maybe doing a little bit better, but I'm also a pretty optimistic person, so maybe that's not true, but yeah. What do you think?
Well, it seems like in recent years because I know a lot about this.
Yeah, it seems like it.
And I'll be going up places like the Rattlesnake and just noticing places. And I swear I think this neighborhood's just going to go up in flames if these embers come down.
Mm-hmm.
And just seeing a lot of places like that around.
Yeah.
So and that's why I think this knowledge really needs to spread. And I really appreciate the messages.
Oh, of course.
It really needs to get farther.
Yeah, I know. And it is hard because if you're not if one house is doing, maybe even two houses are doing great, but the rest of them aren't, it's really frustrating. So I think having those, we call them spark plug neighbors who are coming from me is great, but people might not want to listen to their government employees. Maybe they want to listen to their neighbor. So I think if we're all sharing the message, I think it'll be able to reach people. And changing behavior does take time, but yeah.
Based on Jeff's question, do you have any kind of plans to do a neighborhood assessment and then like do a, block, alert people
Oh,
who
yeah.
are living in an area?
Yeah.
Hey, you're in a red zone, even though you're in the city.
That's such an awesome question. We actually, this is getting into Firewise recognized neighborhoods. Firewise is a NFPA, National Fire Protection Association program. We have a few Firewise neighborhoods in Missoula County, one being the Upper Rattlesnake, and they do a community assessment, and I actually have planned one for the Stone Mountain area in October, and it's like the county, the DNRC, City Fire, we all are gonna go out, look at the risks and help those homeowners prioritize their top risks. I think it's something that needs to be kind of led through that neighborhood, but we are so happy if you want a community assessment or you're interested in the Firewise program. I'm super happy to work with you on that. So, yeah.
Are there insurance companies that are aware of how Firewise or how much work you've done in your ignition zone? And is there any thought of motivating that from either an individual level or a neighborhood level?
That's a really great question that I have been working a lot on with my colleagues. There is not a time in which I can tell a homeowner that if they mitigate their home ignition zone, they'll keep their insurance, unfortunately. Firewise has started being recognized by some insurance companies, so that's good. Being a Firewise neighborhood takes some work, but that's great. Some insurance companies are recognizing it, and then I think what's going to happen is those insurance companies are going to start having their own people come out and look at home ignition zones. But unfortunately, it's kind of, for us, it's a big question mark. I don't know how they always make their determinations on who gets to keep their insurance and who doesn't, unfortunately. And I don't know if it's always informed from the same way. Yeah, I wish. No problem. I'll let you go.
Well, we are right at time.
Oh,
Don't worry about
oh
it.
no, I took the whole time.
Yeah, totally
I
fine.
feel so
There's
bad.
good interest in this, and I think it's really important. So I do want to acknowledge that we are at time for this event. I was planning to present on what you can do on the inside of your home to be more resilient, such as proper ventilation, air sealing. So if you have gaps in your exterior or your building envelope, how to plug those up, make sure that wildfire smoke is not getting into your home, and then in the winter, cold air is not getting into your home, so you can retain the heat, have comfortable comfort levels in your home, good indoor air quality, and save money on your energy bills. What I think I'm going to do is, since majority of you RSVP'd and gave us your email, I'm going to send my slide deck with my notes to all of you. And if you have any questions, I have a business card in the back, and then also at the end of my slide deck is my information, and then also my colleague Corey Dad right here. We work together at the Home Upgrade Hub. We are just right upstairs in this building. So feel free to contact us if you have questions of those slides, or if you yourself want to sign up for a in-home assessment. Corey leads those. My big dream is that we will pair with Olivia's program, and so you would have kind of an all-in-one wraparound service where Olivia is assessing your home outside and then Corey is assessing your home inside. So that's that. My name is Callie Foster. Again, I work for the Home Upgrade Hub. The last plug that I will make is that Corey and I, we do a semi-annual 4-week series. We started it earlier this year when we launched the Home Upgrade Hub, and so every Thursday, starting on October 22nd, here in this building, we're going to walk you through how to properly assess your home, yourself, and then how to plan, budget for, get tax credits, rebates, those sorts of things for an energy efficiency retrofit in your home. So if you're interested in that, it is free. You do not have to commit to all 4 weeks, but we encourage you to do so because they typically build on top of each other. So I'll leave it at that. If you don't mind, when you head out of the building, just put your plate in the back. I am on dish duty after this event. So, and again, thank you for coming. The trash can's right over there. Feel free to take leftover chips if you'd like, because that food was for this event. Let's give a round of applause for Olivia. Yes. And again, thank you for coming. This event was a part of Climate Smart Missoula's Climate Solution Week. We are very happy to be here to present for that big event. Okay, thank you everyone.